Welcome to Crime Stories to Sleep. We're so glad you've joined us. In the comments, let us know where in the world you're listening from tonight. Now, let's get comfortable and get into our first story. If you want more peaceful nights and fascinating tales, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Story 1. When a bride and groom disappear the night before their lavish wedding. What first appears to be a ransom kidnapping spirals into a chilling mystery. As investigators peel back layers of false leads and buried emotions, they uncover a twisted obsession that turns the sacred vow of till death do us part into something far more sinister, launching a race against time to stop a deadly ceremony before it's too late. The late afternoon sun bathed the estate grounds in warm amber light. Tucked into a quiet stretch of coastal countryside, the Evermore estate was exactly the kind of place couples dreamed of. Raw iron gates, manicured hedges, a glossy lake just beyond the ceremony arch. Tables were set with pristine linens. Pastel centerpieces had been positioned with architectural precision, and the event coordinator buzzed from corner to corner with a clipboard in hand. Eleanor, May 28, stood barefoot on the grass in front of the ceremony arbor, her laugh cutting through the air as Julian Carter, her fiancé and best friend since college, wrapped an arm around her waist. She was radiant, the picture of calm joy, her dark hair pulled into a low bun that was already starting to loosen with the wind. Julian, taller and broad-shouldered with easy confidence, leaned close to whisper something in her ear, causing her to burst into another round of laughter. Near the front row of white chairs, the three bridesmaids practiced their marks. Serafina Lowe, the maid of honor, stood in the middle, tall, willowy, with waves of auburn hair that she kept smoothing down as if something were out of place. She wore her signature tight smile and a long champagne-colored rehearsal dress. At her right was Hannah Coleman, a giddy, fast-talking colleague of Eleanor's from her publishing job. To her left was Emma Williams, Eleanor's cousin, and a graduate student who had flown in from Boston the day before. The three of them adjusted the pace of their walk, chatting as the coordinator motioned again. On the opposite side stood the groomsman, Caleb Benson, Julian's best man and longtime childhood friend. Looked like he'd stepped out of a country club ad, clean-cut blazer slung over one shoulder. Beside him were Eric Brown, Julian's cousin who ran a tech startup in Denver, and Nicholas Reed, Julian's quiet college roommate who just returned from overseas deployment. Everyone seemed to share in the joy. The rehearsal felt more like a celebration than a practice. Family members moved through the space with drinks in hand. Eleanor's mother, Catherine May, stood under the trellis, giving notes to the florist, while Julian's father, Robert Carter, tried to corral his two younger nephews, who were chasing each other with ceremony programs. The atmosphere held the charm of effortless anticipation. There were no visible nerves, no tension, except perhaps in the smallest gestures. As the rehearsal wrapped and guests returned to the main lodge for a catered dinner, small groups began to break off. Eleanor pulled her bridesmaids aside to walk the length of the garden path that led toward the lake. "You three are the best," she said, linking arms with Serafina and Emma. "Seriously, I couldn't have done any of this without you. We're just here to make sure you don't elope with the caterer last minute," Hannah joked, nudging her. Serafina smiled faintly, glancing down the path as if distracted. "You okay?" Eleanor asked her. Serafina nodded. "Yeah, just tired, and I don't know. It's kind of emotional watching you get married. We've been through everything together." "I know." Eleanor touched her arm. "It means the world that you're here." "I wouldn't miss it," Serafina said softly. Later that night, in the private bridal suite on the second floor of the lodge, Eleanor helped organize last-minute place cards and favors. Around 10:30, she excused herself, saying she wanted a moment to herself before the big day. Julian offered to walk her back to her room, but she smiled and shook her head. telling him to stay and enjoy one last drink with the guys. "Tomorrow's for us," she whispered, brushing his cheek with a kiss. "Tonight you get to pretend you're still single for a few more hours." Julian watched her go with a grin, then returned to the lounge where the groomsmen were playing a quiet round of poker. By 11:30, he was back in their shared room. Eleanor wasn't there. Julian took a quick look around. No dress bag, no makeup kit, no sign she had even returned since dinner. He figured maybe she was downstairs again, or talking to her mum. He sat on the edge of the bed and reached for his phone. That's when it buzzed. It was a text from Eleanor's number. "Need to talk. Come out to the garden. Just us." Julian frowned. The message was brief. No punctuation. Not exactly Alina's usual tone, but he assumed maybe she wanted a moment alone, away from all the noise. He slid on his coat and stepped into the hall, heading out toward the back exit that opened onto the gardens. The air outside was cool and still. The garden was dimly lit, lanterns casting faint golden pools across the gravel path. He walked past the rehearsal chairs and down toward the lake trail, calling her name softly. Eleanor, no answer. The garden was empty. The estate awoke to birdsong and soft light breaking over the hedges. It was the day of the wedding, but Eleanor May and Julian Carter were nowhere to be found. The wedding planner was the first to realize something was wrong. Breakfast trays had been left outside their shared suite, untouched. Calls to their phones went unanswered. A knock at their door yielded nothing. Finally, the manager opened the door with a spare key. The room was undisturbed. No signs of a struggle. The bed hadn't been slept in. A half-finished glass of champagne sat on the windowsill. Julian's phone was missing. Eleanor's shoes were gone. So was the silence. Within 20 minutes, the estate was buzzing with quiet panic. Caleb, Eric, and Nicholas, still half-dressed from the night before, were pulled aside for questioning. They assumed Julian had stayed up late. Maybe he and Eleanor had taken a walk or left early for some private moment before the ceremony. Catherine May and Robert Carter stood at the foot of the main staircase, stunned into silence as staff began searching the property. Guests were asked to remain in their rooms while the estate was swept. The coordinators checked every hallway, the bridal dressing areas, the pool house, even the guest stables. But there was no sign of the bride or groom. By mid-morning, a staff member had called the authorities after stumbling upon something unusual. Near the woods lining the south perimeter of the property, just outside the tree line, half buried in the grass, lay Julian's phone. The screen was cracked, the casing slightly dented, as if it had been thrown or stepped on. No blood, no footprints. By 9 a.m., the Evermore estate was swarming with uniforms. Detective Jordan Reynolds arrived in an unmarked county vehicle, flanked by 2 investigators from the Violent Crimes Unit. She moved quickly and without ceremony, her manner brisk, expression unreadable. The estate staff had already been pulled from their duties and were gathered on the back patio under the supervision of deputies. Guests were confined to the lodge and had been asked not to use their phones. Jordan conferred briefly with the lodge manager, then headed toward the trine, where Julian's phone had been found. The perimeter had been marked with crime scene tape, and a forensic tech was already cataloguing items found within a 10-foot radius. The ground was soft from last week's rain, ideal for impressions. Jordan crouched near the shattered phone. "No blood?" she asked. "None visible," the tech replied. "But we're running a chemical sweep now." She nodded and stood. "Shut down the estate. No one leaves. We treat this as a live crime scene until proven otherwise. Copy that." Inside the main lodge, a makeshift command post had been set up in the study. Maps, logs, and guest lists were laid out on the long oak table. Julian's phone had been taken in for data extraction, and within the hour, the timeline began to narrow. Last call made was at 9:46 p.m. to his best man, said Agent Kimberly Chen, typing rapidly. No outgoing texts after 10:02, but one received at 10:15. Jordan leaned over her shoulder. The message was short. Need to talk. Come out to the garden. Just us. It had come from Eleanor's number. Send that to Tech. Let's trace the ping. Kimberly nodded, already on it, but the signal dropped off at 2:12 a.m. No new activity since. Jordan looked out the window toward the lake. The water was still, the sky overcast. So, we've got a bride and groom who disappeared just hours before their wedding. No signs of forced entry, no witness statements, and a message from the bride's phone. By midday, the forensics team located something new. Roughly a 4-mile from where Julian's phone had been found. Faint tire tracks curved into the edge of the woods before vanishing altogether. The path was narrow, unpaved, likely used for deliveries or utility access, but hadn't seen much traffic recently. The ground was soft enough to catch deep impressions, but then the tracks stopped. The vehicle must have backed in, one tech suggested, loaded something or someone, and then pulled out in the same direction to mask its tracks. Jordan crouched again, observing the area. Sedan, probably. Small footprint, maybe a compact. Treads shallow. Could match one of the guest cars. Jordan stood, brushing her hands off. Let's get an inventory. Every guest vehicle on the premises. Anything missing? None so far. She looked back toward the lodge. Then we might be looking at someone local, or someone who planned this. The bridal party was brought in first, one by one. Serafina Lowe sat upright on the edge of a leather armchair in the lounge-turned-interview room. Her hands rested in her lap. Her voice, when she spoke, was composed. I left the rehearsal dinner around 10 o'clock, she said. Eleanor said she wanted some time to herself. I offered to walk her, but she said no. Did she seem distressed? Nervous? No, just thoughtful. She always gets quiet before big moments. It's how she processes things. Jordan nodded. What about Julian? I didn't see him after dinner. The guys were still up. I went to bed early. Anyone with you? No, I had my own room. Jordan logged the answers, observing her tone. No hesitation, no defensiveness. She moved through the rest of the bridal party. Hannah Coleman, bubbly and fast-talking, was eager to help. Eleanor was glowing last night, she said. I don't think I've ever seen her that happy. Did she mention needing space? She said she was going to journal a bit before bed, but she usually keeps to herself at night. Emma Williams confirmed the same. Next came the groomsmen. Caleb Benson's hands shook slightly as he described the night. Julian was in a good mood. We played a couple rounds of poker. He left around 10 or so. Said he didn't want to keep Eleanor waiting. Did you think that was unusual? Caleb shook his head. No, he was nervous. Not cold feet nervous, just overwhelmed maybe. Eric Brown and Nicholas Reed both corroborated Caleb's timeline. No one recalled hearing anything unusual during the night. By late afternoon, Jordan circled back to the staff. A fired maintenance worker, Gavin Mitchell, had been let go 2 weeks earlier after showing up drunk and damaging one of the catering vans. Rumors suggested he'd been bitter, even threatening. Jordan had patrol bring him in. Gavin sat with arms folded across his chest. He looked half sober, eyes bloodshot. I didn't touch nobody, he said. Where were you last night? Home with my brother watching the game. Can he confirm that? Yeah, and my parole officer Jordan didn't blink. You knew the grounds better than most. So, Would have been easy for you to get in, even after hours. I didn't, Gavin said flatly. You can check the cameras. They did. Room security camera caught both of them on the couch for 5 straight hours. He was ruled out. Scene 6, the working theory. By nightfall, the estate had gone quiet again, but the investigation was only heating up. Jordan stood at the board inside the study, reviewing the known. Eleanor May and Julian Carter vanished between 10:30 p.m. and midnight. Julian's phone was recovered near the woods. A message from Eleanor's phone threatened. Julian and cut contact after 2 a.m. tire tracks suggest a vehicle came and left undetected. No witnesses, no demands, no scene of struggle. Kimberly stood nearby, arms crossed. So what are we saying? A coordinated kidnapping? Possibly, Jordan said. Someone with access. Someone who knew the layout, knew their habits. No ransom yet, so it's not about money. Feels personal. Kimberly raised an eyebrow. Inside job. Could be, but they're all clean so far. Jordan looked down at Julian's cracked phone, sealed in a plastic bag. Her jaw tightened. Someone wanted them gone. Do you think this was just a ransom kidnapping, or is something far more twisted at play? Drop your theories in the comments. What really happened to Julian and Eleanor, and who had the motive to destroy their wedding day? Give this video a like and stay tuned, because the truth is only just beginning to unfold. And let us know where you're watching from today. Detective Jordan Reynolds stood at the center of the Evermore study. Her arms crossed as she stared down the long timeline now sprawling across the whiteboard. It was the 3rd board they'd filled since the investigation started. Names, timestamps, and arrows in red and blue marker tried to make sense of what still felt like a hole in the earth. Kimberly Chen flipped through Eleanor May's digital footprint. Credit card activity looks normal. Florist dress fittings, bakery orders, no flag threats or odd purchases. She kept her calendar clean. No visits to any clinics, lawyers, or unfamiliar addresses. She lived clean, Jordan said. Kimberly nodded. Every friend and caulker we spoke to described her the same way. Low drama, polite, hardworking, no debts, no grudges, no stalkers. Only recent stress came from planning the wedding. And Julian? Kimberly paused. Bit more complicated. How so? He's got a clean record, too. But a couple years back, he had a girlfriend who didn't take the breakup well. Her name's Charlotte Alcott. They dated for about 6 months. Jordan raised an eyebrow, and she called him over 100 times after he ended things. Even tried to show up at his apartment once. No charges filed, but there's a police report. Jordan nodded slowly. Have someone bring her in. She already reached out, left a voicemail saying she heard about the case and is willing to help. Jordan didn't like that. Volunteers were rarely clean. The next morning, Charlotte Alcott sat across from Jordan in a quiet interview room at the local station. She was 31, professionally dressed with manicured nails and a restless knee that jittered under the table. I haven't spoken to Julian in almost 2 years, she said quickly. I know how it must look, but I've moved on. Jordan kept her tone neutral. Where were you the night of the disappearance? I was in Dallas. I work for a design firm. We had a product launch. I flew out on Thursday and didn't get back until Sunday morning. We'll need verification. Of course, she provided it. Flight stubs, hotel key cards, and itinerary. Kimberly later confirmed everything matched. Did you have any contact with Julian recently? Not directly. I still followed his engagement post. Sure, I mean, you don't just turn that off, but I never tried to interfere. Did you know his fiancée? Charlotte shook her head only from pictures. Jordan studied her. Charlotte didn't show the manic edges of someone spiraling. She showed embarrassment, control. "We may reach out again," Jordan said. Charlotte stood slowly. "I hope you find them." When she was gone, Kimberly looked at Jordan. "She's telling the truth." "Maybe," Jordan murmured. By noon, attention turned back to the estate grounds. Forensics had finished their review of the property surveillance system. Most cameras were intact. Main entrance, parking lots, reception hall, staff corridors, all but one. The garden camera that covered the rear footpath, the one leading directly toward the lake and tree line, had been disabled. Not broken, disabled. The wires were cut cleanly inside the junction box, the tech reported. Snipped just enough to kill the feed without triggering a system alert. When did it go down? Approximately 9:52 p.m., based on internal logs. 10 minutes before Julian received the mysterious message. Someone planned this. Jordan said they knew what to bypass and how to do it without raising suspicion. Guest, staff, not likely staff. They don't have access to the box without a key. Jordan stepped outside, eyes following the now useless camera's field of view. Then it was someone who knew they'd be walking that path. By late afternoon, the sheriff's office received a call. The dispatcher flagged it as urgent and passed it straight to Jordan. The voice on the line was female, mid-40s, hesitant. "I don't know if it's anything, but I was driving down Oak Creek Boulevard just before midnight the other night. I saw a woman near the woods. She was dragging something." "Dragging what?" "A suitcase. A large one, like the kind you use for international flights. She was struggling with it." "Did you see her face?" "No, just long brown hair. She was wearing white." "Could you tell what direction she came from?" "She came out from the old side trail. There's no real houses out there anymore, just those abandoned cabins." "Did she look scared? Injured?" "No, just slow, like she wasn't in a hurry." Jordan took the details, then asked the team to pull up a map. "Let's get units on that road," she said. "If she's telling the truth, that suitcase wasn't just luggage." Canine units were dispatched before sunset. The forest surrounding the Evermore estate wasn't thick, but it spanned nearly 70 acres, most of it unmanaged scrubland and older hunting trails. The handlers split off in pairs. The dogs moved quickly, paws snapping twigs' noses low to the earth. Jordan moved with Unit 2, stepping carefully through the brush as the team swept the southern perimeter. After 20 minutes, one of the shepherds stiffened, then bolted left. They followed. The scent trail led to a small clearing, partially shielded by mossy underbrush and fallen branches. At the center, blood dotted the ground, and a small irregular pool, dried and soaked into the earth. Nearby, 3 zip-tie fragments lay discarded in the dirt, snapped at the locking teeth. A set of deep heel impressions marked the grass beyond. One of the texts knelt beside the evidence. "Someone tried to restrain a person here," he said. Jordan scanned the area. "Bag and tag everything. We get a positive DNA match on that blood. It'll confirm this is now abduction." By the time the sun set, the investigation had shifted jurisdictions. The county sheriff's office formally escalated the case to a criminal abduction. With 2 victims, a disabled surveillance system, suspicious tire tracks, and now physical evidence of restraint. Jordan contacted the local field office of the FBI. Special Agent Reed Garner arrived within hours. Quiet, methodical, and composed, he stood over the whiteboard as Jordan briefed him. "No ransom demand yet," she said. "No bodies, no signs of life, but whoever did this knew the layout. They weren't in a panic. They planned it down to the camera." Reed asked one question. "Any suspects inside the wedding party?" Jordan paused. Not yet. We've cleared staff. Family all have alibis. But I don't like how clean it is. Reed nodded. We'll run our own behavioral profile. In the meantime, keep the pressure on. If they're still alive, someone's feeding off the secrecy. Jordan turned back toward the window. The Evermore estate now stood draped in floodlights. Every path patrolled somewhere. Eleanor and Julian were still out there. She just hoped they were still breathing. Catherine May was in the middle of answering a question from one of the FBI agents when her phone vibrated. She didn't check it immediately. Her focus was on the agent asking about Eleanor's childhood friends. But then it buzzed again and again. By the fourth vibration, her hand trembled as she reached into her purse. The screen showed a new message. Unknown number 1, attachment. The preview stopped her cold. She opened the text. Do not involve police. $500,000 or you'll find her in pieces. Below it, an image, blurry, low resolution. Eleanor, tied to a chair, blindfolded. Her dress was wrinkled, the photo dim and grainy, lit only by what looked like a flashlight. Catherine made a strangled sound in her throat. Ma'am, Agent Kimberly Chen asked. Catherine thrust the phone into her hands. It's from them. It's her. Oh God, it's her. The room shifted in an instant. Agents moved in. Phones came out. The message was forwarded to the digital forensics team. A copy of the image was printed on the spot. Jordan Reynolds arrived seconds later, reviewing the text with a flat expression. First ransom demand, she said quietly. That escalates things. Robert Carter entered just as Catherine started to cry. When he saw the image, his jaw locked. 500,000, he muttered. That's not random. No, Jordan agreed. It's targeted. They knew her family had the money. Catherine wiped her eyes. We have it. I'll get it. Just let me get her back. We're not handing over anything yet, Jordan said firmly. Let's trace it first. The forensics team worked quickly, isolating the source of the message within 20 minutes. The text was sent using a spoofed IP, said Agent Pyle, pointing to the digital map on the monitor. But the phone that sent it, Eleanor's phone, pinged off a tower in Wexford County, 50 miles northeast of here. Exact location, just long enough to send the message. Then it went dark again. Jordan traced the outline on the map. Wexford was rural, lightly populated, and wooded, mostly small farms and hunting cabins. Few cameras, fewer witnesses. No public buildings, Jordan asked. There's an abandoned auto repair yard about 4 miles from the tower range, Pyle replied. It's been empty since '09. No power, no heat, no cameras. Jordan studied the photo of Eleanor again. Could be where she is now, Pyle added. Jordan shook her head. Or where she was long enough to send this. She's already been moved. Back at the estate, a secondary forensic sweep had been ordered around the perimeter, especially the stretch near the garden path and the rear woods where Julian's phone had been found. Around dusk, one of the forensics techs called in Jordan. Luminol sweep picked up a trail, he said, pointing to a strip of forest mulch just past the lodge's maintenance shed. The team had treated the ground with a chemical reagent. Under the forensic light, faint streaks and droplets glowed bluish-white in an uneven path leading away from the estate. Consistent with blood, the tech confirmed. The trail went on for about 20 yards before thinning out. At the end, a rough scuffle of impressions could be seen in the leaves, like someone had fallen or been dragged. Samples were collected and fast-tracked. The DNA rush order came back just after midnight. To profiles. One belonged to Julian Carter. The second belonged to an unidentified female. No match in the system. No, Eleanor, Jordan asked. No, said Kimberly. Only Julian and this other woman. Blood, hair strand, and partial touch DNA on a strip of bark. Jordan reviewed the lab breakdown, her thumb tapping against the table. So, either someone helped carry him, she said, or someone was hurt during the abduction. Could be the kidnapper, Kimberly offered. A woman strong enough to drag him. Jordan looked skeptical. Maybe, but it's odd. If someone knocked Julian unconscious, then bled nearby, that means there was a struggle, and they didn't get away clean. Could be a partner, Kimberly added. A woman assisting someone else. By morning, the tension in the estate had shifted from silent grief to open fracture. Catherine sat in the corner of the lodge library, arms folded tightly, her face pale from lack of sleep. Across the room, Robert stood by the fireplace, speaking to Agent Reed Garner. I think we should consider the possibility of paying, Robert said quietly. If it's what they want, Jordan overheard and cut in. No, you send money. You never see her again. That photo proves she's alive. That's leverage we can still use. They'll kill her, Catherine whispered. No, Jordan said calmly. They sent proof of life. They want to keep her breathing for now. But what if that changes? Robert snapped. We find the people who sent it, Jordan said. But we don't feed them. The forensic lab called just after 6 o'clock. A.M. Jordan was still reviewing surveillance notes in the estate study when Kimberly brought her the report in silence. She set it down on the table and Jordan scanned the summary line. Contributor Serafina Lowe confirmed 99.98% match. The air in the room shifted. She submitted a sample voluntarily. Kimberly said, we ran it against the unknown female profile found near the luminal trail. It's her. Jordan didn't respond at first. She looked out the tall windows of the lodge, where early sunlight cracked through the grey clouds. She said she didn't see either of them after the rehearsal. Jordan finally murmured. Said she went up to the room early. She lied, Kimberly said. But the prints might be worse. What prints? Kimberly handed her a second page. They found something near the tree-line. A forensics technician unfolded the plastic evidence bag carefully, laying it on the table in the mobile unit. Inside was a dirt-stained length of wood, roughly the size of a fireplace log, with one end blunted and splintered. A patch of dry reddish-brown marked one side. No doubt about it, the tech said. That's blood, already confirmed as Julian's. Jordan pulled on gloves and examined the smudged grip. Fingerprint powder had lifted 3 partials, 1 full, and the prints matched to Serafina Lowe. Just her. No gloves, no transfer. Jordan studied the object again. The shape, the angle of the blood, the density of the stain. If she hit him with this, Jordan said, he didn't walk away. Jordan handed the bag back. We need to find her now. Jordan returned to the lodge. Serafina Lowe was nowhere to be found. According to the desk officer stationed outside the guest wing, Serafina had last been seen around midnight, quietly walking toward the library. No one saw her after that, and no one thought to keep eyes on her. She was cooperating. Nothing flagged. Jordan's teeth ground together. So, while we were tracking an anonymous ransom trail, the woman who left DNA and fingerprints on a bloody weapon walked straight off the estate. Kimberly pulled up Seraphine's file. She lives 20 minutes away. Do we have enough for a warrant? Barely, but we have probable cause. Get it signed? The search team arrived at Serafina Lowe's apartment just after 10 a.m. The sun was fully up. But her block, a quiet row of early 2000s townhomes, was quiet. She hadn't returned. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Jordan led the team inside after the warrant was executed. The air was cold. Still, her curtains were drawn tightly, and the apartment smelled faintly of disinfectant. What they found inside was worse than expected. The living room walls were covered with photos of Julian, dozens of them, some formal, taken from wedding prep, bridal party selfies, and group outings, but others were more invasive. Shots of him standing in line at a cafe, walking into the gym, getting gas. Jesus, one officer muttered. In the center of it all stood a collage, Serafina and Julian side by side. Cutouts from separate events pasted into a fake scene of a wedding ceremony. Eleanor's face had been crossed out in 3 different images, inked over so violently the paper tore. Kimberly moved toward the desk. A leather-bound journal sat atop a neat stack of wedding flyers. She opened the journal carefully. Each page was densely written. The handwriting looped erratically. Dates were scrolled in the margins. March 5th. He looked at me again today like he used to. He's unhappy. I can tell. She doesn't know him the way I do. March 19th. I saw them at the bakery. She clung to his arm like a leash. He didn't laugh. Not the way he used to with me. He's pretending. April 2nd, he didn't choose her. He was cornered. She manipulated him. If I could just talk to him, really talk to him, he'd remember. Page after page. Delusion layered over longing, rationalizations for things that hadn't happened. Convinced she'd been wronged, Kimberly turned another page. May 12th, the dress fits. It's almost time. I'll need the pastor's answer soon. She flipped to the last few pages. Sketches of a wedding chapel, a list of chemical compounds. Then one final line written in bold across the bottom of a torn page. Till death do us part. The back bedroom had been transformed into a makeshift preparation space. A garment bag hung on the door. Inside was a white dress, not Eleanor's, but a close imitation. Next to it, a stack of wedding flyers printed and folded. Julian's name printed neatly alongside Seraphine's. No mention of Eleanor, no venue details, no guests. On the dresser, police found a small case filled with chemical vials. One was labeled chloroform. Another bore faint fingerprints. Jordan stood in the doorway, saying nothing. Across the dresser were several folded pamphlets, each from the same chapel. A rural one nestled between the county border and an old forestry road. The address had been circled in red. Jordan took a slow breath. She reached for her radio. "Get units in the cars," she said. "We're moving out now." That chapel might be where this ends. It was nearly dusk when the white sedan pulled up outside the weather-worn chapel. The building was modest. Brick facade, peeling white trim, and a faded steeple that leaned slightly left. There hadn't been a service there in years, but the lights were on tonight. Inside, Reverend Marcus Thorne was stacking hymnals near the altar when he heard the crunch of tires outside. He stepped to the vestibule and glanced through the window. A woman emerged from the driver's side. She was wearing a white dress, satin, sleeveless, wrinkled slightly from a day of wear, but still clearly ceremonial. Her hair had been curled and pinned with little faux pearls. She walked toward the door slowly, hands folded. Reverend Thorne opened the door. "Evening, it's my wedding day," Serafina Lowe said softly. The priest hesitated. "I don't believe we had anything scheduled tonight." "No," she replied, smiling faintly. "But you're still a man of God, aren't you?" He studied her more closely. There was a tremble behind her smile. Her eyes were bright, too bright. Something about her posture, her tight grip on the purse she held, made his shoulders tense. Serafina leaned in. "I need you to marry us." Reverend Thorne blinked. "I'm sorry, who is us?" Serafina opened her purse slowly. The glint of metal caught the light first. Then, deliberately, she lifted out the small black pistol, and aimed it at his chest. "Come with me," she said. "He's in the car." The priest raised both hands. "Miss, whatever this is, walk." Serafina gestured with the barrel toward the chapel steps. He stepped out, heart hammering. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said. "I just need you to do your job just once, please." They crossed the small gravel lot toward the sedan. She moved ahead of him, walking with a serene, almost reverent pace, like this was a procession. She reached the back seat and opened the door. Inside, Julian Carter lay slumped against the seatbelt. His tuxedo shirt was wrinkled, buttons half undone, hands zip-tied behind his back. A gag covered his mouth, and his eyes fluttered open briefly as the door creaked. Next to him, Eleanor was curled on her side, unconscious. Her hair clung to her temple with sweat. Her arms were bound at the wrists, her body unmoving. Julian let out a muffled grunt, then sagged forward slightly. Reverend Thorne inhaled sharply. "They're not well," he said. "They're resting," Serafina replied. "He had a headache earlier, but he'll be fine. He always gets nervous before big moments." The priest looked at her and the young lady. "She's my bridesmaid." They stood beside the car, dusk falling rapidly. The trees beyond the lot shifted gently in the wind. Somewhere far off, an owl cried. "You understand this is not right," Reverend Thorne said cautiously. Serafina closed the door. "I'm not asking," he kept his voice even. "Marriage, it requires consent from both parties. Can't you see he loves me?" Serafina said suddenly, "I'd do anything for him." The priest hesitated. "Serafina, this isn't love. Whatever's happened here, you've hurt people." She stepped toward him. "It was always supposed to be us. I stood by while she flaunted her ring, while she planned the big wedding, while he smiled like he didn't know what he lost. But deep down, he knew I could see it." Reverend Thorne tried to keep her talking. "If he truly loves you, why not wait? Why bring him here like this? Because this is the only way," she whispered. "This is the only place they won't interrupt us." The priest took a step back. "I won't do it." She turned slowly. Her voice was flat. "Yes, you will." "No," he said firmer now. "Whatever pain you're carrying, it's not love. It's control. And God will not bless that." Seraphine's smile trembled, then disappeared. The pistol lifted again. "Please," she said, her voice tight. "Don't ruin this." Reverend Thorne took another half step, then turned fast. He bolted. The gunshot shattered the quiet. It rang out once across the woods, echoing off the tree like a clap of thunder. Then silence. Inside the car, Julian stirred, eyes half-focused. He shifted his wrists against the zip ties. The plastic bit into his skin. His ears rang from the muffled shot. Footsteps crunched outside. The door creaked open again. Serafina stood there, silhouetted against the dying light. The gun lowered. Her dress was wrinkled. A dark smear streaked near the hem. Her eyes were glassy. She smiled again. "It's time," she whispered. Just then, the chapel doors burst open. SWAT officers moved in, weapons drawn, but what they found made them freeze in place. At the altar stood Serafina Lowe, trembling with euphoria in a crumpled white gown. One hand clutched a gun. In the other, she gripped Julian Carter's wrist. His tuxed, disheveled, his face pale, his hands loosely bound in front of him. Beside them, Reverend Thorne stood rigid behind the pulpit, his mouth opened, barely able to speak. In the front pew, Eleanor sat tied to a chair, her torn wedding dress stir with dirt. Her eyes met Jordan's across the aisle. Serafina turned toward the officers. "You're just in time," she said with a shaky grin. He's finally ready. Father, she said sweetly, you may begin. The priest swallowed hard. He opened his Bible with trembling fingers. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here. Skip the intro, Serafina snapped. Straight to the vows. She pressed the gun tighter against Julian's back. You say the words now. The priest blinked, disoriented. Do you, Julian Carter? Take this woman. Julian didn't answer. Serafina turned toward him, voice softening. Say it, Julian. We're almost there. From the pew, Eleanor's voice broke through. Serafina, stop, please. This isn't real. Serafina wheeled around, fury flashing. You don't get to speak. You stole him. He was mine. I loved him first. Her hand trembled. The gun wavered. Julian's fingers twitched, quietly working the zip tie. The priest hesitated. Serafina stared at him. Continue. Do you take this woman? Julian cut in low and steady. I do, Seraphine's eyes filled. She smiled. The priest's voice trembled. You may now. Julian lunged. His shoulder crashed into Seraphine's ribs, just as her finger twitched on the trigger. The gun went off. A single, deafening crack rang out through the chapel. Julian dropped to the floor. Serafina screamed. She collapsed beside him, the pistol slipping from her hand. Blood bloomed quickly beneath his tuxedo shirt, staining the white linen crimson. No, 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 she cried, clutching him. Julian, baby, please, no. From the back of the chapel, tactical officers surged forward. Drop the weapon, someone shouted, even as Serafina fumbled blindly at Julian's chest, sobbing. 2 officers yanked her away and slammed her to the floor. She didn't resist. She only screamed his name. Julian groaned, struggling to lift his head. Jordan and Eleanor reached him at the same time. Stay with me, Eleanor said, dropping to her knees, her hands pressed firmly to his side, trying to slow the bleeding. Julian, look at me. Look at me. He blinked, eyes glassy. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice paper thin. I tried to hold on. No, no, no. You're going to be fine. Just keep your eyes open. Eleanor's voice cracked. Please, Julian, don't do this. Behind them, Serafina thrashed as the cuffs locked around her wrists. She wailed incoherently, body heaving in waves. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, she sobbed. He was supposed to marry me. We were meant to be. Officers dragged her out as she kicked and cried. Paramedics stormed in seconds later, pushing Jordan aside as they stabilized Julian and transferred him to a stretcher. Pressure here. Keep him conscious. Eleanor followed them all the way to the ambulance steps, her dress soaked with his blood, face hollow with terror. The walls of East Haven's ICU pulsed with low mechanical hums and the slow, irregular rhythm of heart monitors. Julian Carter lay unconscious, a breathing tube secured at his mouth, the skin of his chest pale and drawn beneath a thin sheet. Machines stood guard around his bed like sentinels, each measuring a vital sign clinging to normally. Eleanor sat by his bedside in silence. She hadn't moved in hours. Her dress from the chapel had been replaced with hospital scrubs and an old cardigan one of the nurses lent her. Her hands stayed folded in her lap, occasionally rising to rest gently over Julian's. Dr. Vance entered softly, clipboard in hand. He made it through, he said, watching her face. The bullet tore through his lower abdomen and clipped part of the iliac artery. We were able to stop the bleeding and repair the damage, but he's not out of the woods yet. Recovery will be slow. Eleanor's nod was almost imperceptible, but he's going to live. Yes, he's going to live. She exhaled a fragile breath. "Thank you. You should rest," the doctor added. "Eat something." "I will," she said. But she didn't move. She stayed even after the lights dimmed for the night shift, speaking softly to Julian, even if he couldn't hear her, telling him he was safe, that she was there, that none of it had been his fault. When Julian finally stirred the next morning, eyelids fluttering like someone waking from a nightmare, Eleanor was still at his side, and she was the first thing he saw. At the county detention center, Serafina Lowe sat in an observation room. Her wrists were cuffed to the bolted-down table, her knuckles bruised. She looked calm, too calm. Detective Jordan Reynolds watched from behind the two-way glass. Dr. Hughes, the forensic psychologist assigned to the case, sat across from Serafina. "When did you first fall in love with Julian Carter?" she asked gently. Serafina blinked. "Fall in love," she repeated, almost offended. "It was sophomore year art history." Dr. Hughes nodded. "Did he ever return your feelings?" "He did," Serafina said immediately. "I saw it in his eyes before she got in his head. And you believe the wedding at the chapel was real." "It was our second chance at the altar." He said, "I do. That was real." Jordan closed her eyes briefly, listening. The diary retrieved from Seraphine's apartment had filled in the gaps. It was bound in pink leather, pages stuffed with clippings, photos, and hundreds of entries dating back 6 years. Some pages were written in pen, others in marker. A few were stained with something red, possibly wine. One page had a photo of Eleanor and Julian at a gala. Eleanor's face violently scratched out in black ink. "He was supposed to be mine," Serafina had written. "She stole my future, but I will get it back. I just need to remind him." A formal evaluation was conducted 3 days later by a court-appointed panel of psychiatrists. It didn't take long. Delusional disorder, heterodomanic type, severe. Her history showed signs of obsessive behavior since adolescence. She had been prescribed antipsychotics during college, but stopped taking them after 2 months. She never returned for follow-up care. She hadn't seen a therapist in over 5 years. During her interviews, Serafina smiled often. She responded clearly. She expressed no remorse. "Julian and I always had a connection." She told one evaluator he was just scared. He needed someone to protect him. When asked if she understood that Julian was engaged to Eleanor, Serafina tilted her head. He said, "I do, didn't he?" The judge reviewed the findings in closed court. Within an hour, she was declared mentally unfit to stand trial and remanded to Crestwood Mental Health Institute, a secure mental health facility known for handling high-risk patients. Her final words before being transferred: "He'll visit me, he'll see." She waved at the bafe like a bride, leaving her reception. A year had passed. Now, on a quiet stretch of coastline miles from any town, Julian and Eleanor stood facing each other, barefoot in the sand. No aisle, no flowers, no music. Just the rhythmic pull of the tide and the cool breeze moving through the dunes. Eleanor's dress was simple, flowing white linen, her hair unpinned, catching the wind. Julian wore rolled-up slacks and a loose button-down, the faint scar below his ribs now just a mark, one he no longer hid. This was the ceremony they never got to have. Something quiet, honest. Standing further up the beach, near the driftwood line, Detective Jordan Reynolds watched from a distance. Her shoes dangled from one hand, the other shielding her eyes from the low afternoon sun. She wasn't supposed to be there in any official capacity. Eleanor had written to her weeks ago with an invitation. No pressure, no need for RSVP, just a simple note. "You brought us home. We'd like you to come." Jordan had smiled when she read it. Now, as she stood under the open sky, she saw not survivors, but 2 people reclaiming their lives. She didn't step closer. She didn't interrupt. She simply watched and bore quiet witness. Eleanor took a breath. "I don't need a ceremony to love you," she began, voice trembling. "But I want to stand here and say it anyway. You've helped me through things I never imagined, and you've come back from places no one else could have. I'll never forget that." Julian nodded, emotion brimming, but held steady. He stepped forward, his hands wrapping around hers. "This time," he said, voice low and certain, "no one's taking this from us." She felt the words settle into her chest like an anchor grounding her. The ocean breeze quieted for a moment, like the sea itself was listening. Julian pulled her gently toward him. "I vow to protect what we've built, to keep choosing you even on the hard days, especially on the hard days." She leaned in, forehead touching his. "And I vow," she whispered, "to remember the love that started this and the strength that carried us through." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. Then, softly, almost like a promise to the waves, she said, "Till death do us part." If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more on our channel. Story 210-year-old Lily Peterson vanished after a sleepover, leaving her mother desperate for answers. But as the hours stretch into days, a growing list of inconsistencies turns one mother's fear into a full-blown investigation that will haunt the town for years. The snow hadn't let up all afternoon. It clung to the edges of sidewalks and coated the narrow road winding through Crystal Creek's east side. Evelyn Peterson steered carefully around a patch of slush as her SUV pulled into the aging apartment complex at the end of Elm Street. Her daughter Lily was practically bouncing in the passenger seat. "Do you think Leo's still up?" she asked, grinning through a missing tooth that had recently fallen out. "We said we were going to play Uno and watch Enchanted Isle again. I'm sure he's awake," Evelyn said, keeping her voice light, though her grip on the steering wheel was tight. The apartment building was dimly lit, a few of the porch lights already burned out. She parked near the front entrance, hesitating as Lily unbuckled. She reached out, gently brushing snowflakes from her daughter's hair. "You've got your overnight bag, toothbrush, charger." Lily held up her backpack like it was a trophy. "All here." Evelyn leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Call me if you need anything, okay?" Lily gave her a thumbs up and jumped out, boots crunching against the icy gravel. She skipped up the walkway as the front door opened and Leo peered out, waving. Behind him, Julian Miller stood with one hand on the doorframe. He gave Evelyn a nod, flat, unreadable, before ushering both kids inside. Evelyn waited until the door shut before exhaling. She remained parked for a minute longer, watching the light flicker in the window. Then she turned the key and drove off into the falling snow. Julian hadn't always been like this, quiet, guarded. When Evelyn first met him, he was charming, funny even, but that dissolved fast. 2 months after Leo was born, he was arrested for possession and resisting arrest. That was the first time she moved out. The last time was after he broke a kitchen chair during an argument and claimed it slipped. They hadn't lived together in almost 4 years. Now, parenting exchanges were arranged carefully. Holidays split, weekends rotated. Lily wasn't technically his child, but she adored her little brother and begged to come when he stayed with Julian. Evelyn relented occasionally against her instincts. Back in her apartment, Evelyn texted Lily around 9:15. "You good, honey?" A reply came 10 minutes later. "Yeah, we're watching a movie." Leo's being silly, lol. That was the last time Evelyn heard from her daughter. The next morning, a watery grey light seeped through Evelyn's blinds. She reached for her phone instinctively, eyes still adjusting. No texts, no missed calls. It was 8:12 a.m. She waited another 10 minutes, then called Lily. No answer. She tried Julian next. He picked up on the third ring. "She's not with you." His voice was flat. Evelyn sat up straight. "What?" "No, she stayed at your place." There was a pause. "She left early. Said she wanted to walk home." "What do you mean she left?" "Around 5:30, maybe. Said she was up and ready to go." Evelyn was silent for a beat. "She's 10, Julian. It's snowing. Why would you let her walk?" "I didn't think she was serious. Next thing I know, she's gone." Evelyn's pulse thundered. She jumped out of bed, pulled on a sweatshirt, and bolted for her keys. "I'm calling the police," she said. Julian muttered something she couldn't hear before the call ended. Officer Logan Parker arrived first. By then, Evelyn had driven back to the apartment complex, pounding on Julian's door. No one answered. The officer stepped between her and the door, trying to calm her down. "She's missing," Evelyn said, breathless. "She's not the type to run off." She was excited about this weekend. She's scared of the dark, for God's sake. Parker took her statement, jotted down details, then asked for a recent photo. Evelyn pulled up one on her phone. Lily smiling at the winter fair, red scarf snug under her chin, cheeks rosy from cotton candy and cold. They knocked again, louder this time. Eventually, Julian opened the door, blinking like he'd just woken up. He wore a hooded sweatshirt and sweatpants, hair "I already told her what happened," he said, gesturing at Evelyn. "Mind if we come in?" Parker asked. Julian hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the apartment was sparsely furnished. Couch, coffee table, a flat screen on the wall. Toys scattered on the floor. Leo sat on the carpet playing with action figures, seemingly unaware of the tension in the room. Parker crouched beside him. "Hey, buddy, did you see your sister this morning?" Leo looked up, blinking. "She was gone when I woke up." "Did she say anything before you went to bed?" He nodded. "We watched the movie. She said she missed Mum." Parker exchanged a look with Evelyn. "We're going to get someone to look into this more formally." By mid-afternoon, the case had escalated. A bolo was issued. Lily's photos circulated across local departments. The weather, still hovering near freezing, added urgency. Detective Amelia Hayes arrived just before sundown. She was direct, non-nonsense, with sharp eyes and a reputation for cutting through misdirection. She met Evelyn at the station, gently reviewing the night's events. "Anything unusual about Lily's messages?" she asked, scrolling through Evelyn's phone. "No," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "She said everything was fine, and you trust Julian." Evelyn swallowed. "But I didn't think." Amelia didn't press. Instead, she looked over the apartment drop-off time, last text, and Julian's version of events. That night, Evelyn sat in Lily's bedroom, staring at her untouched bed. The glittery night lamp projected stars onto the ceiling. She clutched Lily's favorite headband in her lap. Across town, Amelia stood beside Officer Parker, near a row of trailhead markers at the edge of town. If she really walked out alone, Amelia said there should be footprints, tire marks, something. We checked the road. Snowplows came through just after 6. If there was anything, it's gone. Amelia nodded grimly. "Get me a team." We start a grid search in the morning. As they turned back toward their cruisers, the first gust of wind swept through the trees. The night settled in, long and silent, and Lily Peterson was nowhere to be found. By first light, the Crystal Creek Sheriff's Department had activated a Level 2 missing child alert. The air was dry and sharp, wind skimming over snowbanks and pushing against the search teams who fanned out across the frozen outskirts. Officers, volunteers, and dogs swept wooded trails, culverts, ditches, and thin paths behind gas stations and schools. Drone teams launched from the high school football field. Helicopters arrived just after 9, circling slow and low, stirring up white mist over frozen rooftops. Detective Amelia Hayes stood near the edge of Silver Lake Trail with her arms folded, eyes tracking the dog teams that combed the ravine. "Nothing yet," a deputy said, approaching her with frosted breath. "No prints, no dropped items, nothing." "Grid out further east," she replied. "Send 2 teams past the access road." If she walked out alone, she didn't go far. But Amelia didn't believe Lily had left on her own. Back at the station, Julian sat hunched over the edge of the interview table, chewing a fingernail, eyes darting between Amelia and the recorder, blinking in red. He wore the same sweatshirt as the day before. The hood was up. "She was up early," he repeated, voice low. "Maybe 5. Said she couldn't sleep. Wanted to go home." "You said yesterday she walked out on her own." "Yeah, she said she wanted to walk. I told her to wait, but she just left." Amelia flipped open her notepad. "What time, exactly?" "I don't know. 5:30, maybe." "You watched her leave?" He paused. "Not exactly. I was in the bathroom. When I came out, she was gone." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "And you didn't call Evelyn?" "I thought she'd show up there." "You thought it was okay for a 10-year-old girl to walk home in the snow before sunrise?" Julian's mouth opened, then closed. She seemed sure. Amelia leaned back. "You understand how that sounds?" Julian's leg bounced under the table. "I didn't do anything to her." Amelia didn't respond. She stood, collected her file, and signaled to Officer Parker through the glass. "We'll be in touch," she said. Later that day, Amelia and Evelyn sat with Leo in the child interview room. Neutral walls, a cartoon poster, a plush lion on the table. Evelyn stayed silent beside her son, trying not to let the tremor in her hands show. "Leo," Amelia said gently, "do you remember when Lily woke up?" Leo nodded. "She wasn't there when I got up." "Just Dad. Did you hear her leave?" He shook his head. "No." Amelia glanced at Evelyn. "Did Lily take her boots with her when she packed?" Evelyn frowned. "She wore them when I dropped her off. They're the only pair that fit right now." Amelia made a note. The boots weren't at the apartment. Julian said she wore them out, but there were no footprints. That afternoon, Amelia stopped by the corner market across from the apartment complex. The clerk, a retired man named Jack, had been manning the counter since sunrise. "You got footage from outside?" Amelia asked, facing the sidewalk. Jack nodded. "I usually let it roll." Motion triggered. Only a 2-day loop, though. He brought her to the back room where the monitor sat humming quietly. They reviewed the early morning window. At 5:15, a raccoon tripped the sensor. At 5:27, a city snowplow passed. At 5:32, a woman in a red coat walked a dog. But no children, no Lily. By 6 a.m., traffic picked up. Parents heading to early shifts, headlights cutting through snow. Still nothing resembling a 10-year-old girl walking alone. Amelia copied the footage. "If she left, it wasn't on foot," she muttered. Late that evening, Amelia returned to Julian's apartment with a search warrant. Officer Parker knocked firmly. Julian answered slower this time. "You said you had nothing to hide," Amelia reminded him. "Then you won't mind." Inside, the place was more cluttered than before. Dirty dishes in the sink, blankets crumpled on the couch. Amelia moved to the bathroom. The tile floor was damp. The smell hit her instantly. "Bleach, have you been cleaning?" she asked over her shoulder. Julian shrugged. "Just wiped down the bathroom. Place was a mess." Amelia crouched by the drain. Bleach stains traced the bottom of the tub. A rag was still wedged behind the toilet. In the parking lot, Parker inspected Julian's car. He popped the trunk, pulled open the rear floor mat, and stepped back. The smell was sharp, chemically sterile. He called for gloves. A bottle of industrial bleach was tucked beside the spare tire, half empty. The back seat had faint blotches, cleaned hastily. Amelia didn't need lab results yet to know what they'd find. Back at the station, Amelia pulled Julian's record. Evelyn had mentioned his prior run-ins, but she hadn't known the full extent. In 2008, Julian had been charged with child endangerment in a custody dispute involving another child. The details were sealed, but the summary was enough. He'd left a toddler alone in a car while visiting a girlfriend. No injuries, but the charge stuck. He served 18 months and completed a parenting class. Amelia stared at the file. She tapped her pen against the desk. He was a liar, certainly, and he had a record. But without a body, without proof, he wasn't under arrest. Not yet. The next morning, a map of Crystal Creek sat spread across the station's planning table. Amelia and Sheriff Thomas Vance reviewed the sectors already searched. "We need to expand," Amelia said. "North edge of the lake, behind the rail tracks, and the wooded patch off Willow Road. If he moved her, it would have been between 5 and 7 a.m. before the first patrol. We're short on volunteers," Thomas said. "I'll put in a request with state rescue. We need dogs, aerial support, and divers for the lake." "You think she's there?" "I think he panicked and he had bleach in the car." They marked the new zones. Teams were sent out by midday. By nightfall, the town knew. News vans set up outside the sheriff's office. Local anchors reported on site. Evelyn's plea aired at 6 p.m. broadcast across the region. "I just want my daughter home," she said into the mic, voice cracking. "She's not a runaway. She's 10. If anyone saw anything, please say something." The community responded. A vigil was held in the square outside City Hall. People gathered with candles, bundled in coats and scarves, faces drawn with worry and sorrow. Evelyn stood beside her sister, clutching a framed photo of Lily in a green dress. Beside them, a group of children placed paper stars on a small pine tree, each star bearing a message. "Come home soon. We miss you. Don't be afraid." Across the street, Amelia watched from her car. She didn't get out. She couldn't. Not with the questions still unanswered and the clock ticking. Somewhere out there, Lily was waiting. Did Lily truly vanish without a trace? Or is Julian Miller hiding more than he's saying? Whose suspicion is the strongest? Let us know what you think in the comments. Will Evelyn ever uncover the full truth about her daughter's disappearance? Give the video a like and keep watching to find out. 2 days after the vigil, Detective Amelia Hayes' desk phone rang just past 7 a.m. She had been staring blankly at the incident map, red pins poking across Crystal Creek like tiny wounds. "This is Hayes," she answered, not looking away from the lake perimeter. A man's voice came through low and jittery. "I don't want to give my name." She reached for a pen. "Go ahead." I saw that car, the black Taurus, day of the girl going missing. I saw it out near North Lake before sunrise. What time? I was heading out to set up my ice shack. Maybe 4:45. It was parked off the access trail, just sitting there, lights off. Anyone inside? I didn't look that close, just caught the shape and those fog lights under the bumper. Amelia's writing slowed. "You're sure it was that make?" "Positive. I had one back in '09. Same oval badge, same body curve." "Did you see it leave?" "No. When I came back around 7, it was gone." Amelia looked across the station. Thank you. If you think of anything else, but the line was already dead. By noon, a fresh team was sweeping North Lake's southern shoreline. The lake sat partially frozen, the center solid, the edges brittle and cracked. Brush around the perimeter was thin, but tangled with cattails bent under snow. Amelia stood near the treeing as two cadaver dogs moved in wide arcs. Their handlers called soft commands, gloved hands gripping taut leashes. Got something. One of them called. The first dog had gone still, nose pressed to a patch of packed earth near a boat launch. A second dog echoed the reaction, pawing and whining softly. Amelia moved in. The soil looked ordinary, stained with sand, twigs, broken reeds. She looked up toward the trail. The path from the parking lot curved cleanly toward the lake. Tracks were long gone, erased by wind and melting snow. But the terrain told a story, one that fit too neatly with what she already suspected. By the weekend, Crystal Creek was divided. The news outlets had run Evelyn's vigil speech on a loop, but the internet didn't wait for permission to speculate. Social media turned cruel. Posts accused Evelyn of negligence. Others said it was Julian. You let your kids stay with a felon. What did you expect? One thread on a local forum claimed Lily had run away before. That was false. Evelyn saw it all. She stopped opening her phone. Even her neighbors had grown quiet, their hells turning into uncertain glances and silences at the mailbox. At the station, Amelia noticed the change, too. Every caller, every lead, came with caveats now. Bias, rumor, anger. You think she's alive? Officer Parker asked her, late one night. Amelia didn't look up from the case file. I think someone's hoping we stop looking. The following Monday, a knock came on Amelia's door at 6 a.m. It was a neighbor from Julian's complex, Ms. Iris Connors, a widow who lived on the second floor. I didn't want to get involved, Iris began, but I keep thinking about it. Amelia invited her inside. It was that morning, Iris said. I wake early, 4:30 every day. Been that way since my husband passed. Amelia nodded, letting her talk. I was making coffee, and I heard a car door slammed once hard, then a few seconds later again, like a trunk. I looked out and saw Julian's car back up fast and turned toward the road. Did you see anyone else? No, it was still dark. I just remember thinking it was strange. Thank you, Amelia said. You've been helpful. She logged the statement immediately. The timeline was tightening. Forensics had been running samples all week. On Tuesday, results landed. Soil collected from the wheel well of Julian's car contained mineral traces consistent with the southern shore of North Lake, silicric silt, and a specific lichen found near the waterline. Combined with the bleach scent, Amelia felt a cold certainty spread through her. She called Julian in for questioning. He declined. Instead, she got a call from a new number. This is Adam Grant, the voice said. I'm representing Mr. Miller moving forward. All communication should go through me. Amelia closed her notebook slowly. Your client's refusing to cooperate. He's asserting his right to counsel and declining the polygraph. Standard practice detective. That same afternoon, Julian officially retained Grant, a private attorney from Seaside with a reputation for dragging out cases. Amelia stared at her board. It was all there. A timeline, a witness, forensics, the dogs, the car. Amelia met with Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Roberts that Thursday, pacing in his office as he reviewed the summary. No prints, no DNA, just circumstantial, Jennifer said, sighing as he tapped the file. It's a pattern, Amelia said. Everything aligns. Soil match, witness seeing the car, dogs reacting. He cleaned his car and apartment with bleach. Jennifer looked over her glasses, but no body. No physical proof she's dead. No murder weapon, no blood. Without a body, we don't even have official cause of death. We can't win that in court. Amelia clenched her jaw. So, we wait. You keep digging. Until then, he pushed the file back toward her. It's not enough. By the end of January, the media had mostly moved on. The snow in Crystal Creek turned dirty and crusted. The search teams thinned. Volunteers stopped showing up. Lily's photo still hung in the sheriff's office, but the urgency had faded. Evelyn stopped returning calls from reporters. Her voice, when Amelia checked in, had gone quiet. It's been 3 weeks, she said. How does a 10-year-old just vanish? Amelia had no answer. Every lead was cold. Julian had gone silent, insulated by his lawyer. Without new evidence, the case hovered in limbo, technically open but paralyzed. Amelia stood one morning outside North Lake, staring out at the jagged ice half-melted. Wind rippled across the surface. Somewhere beneath that, she felt was the truth. The thaw came early that spring. By mid-April, the ice across Whispering Pond had cracked into jagged plates, breaking apart like old glass. 2 fishermen, brothers from out of town, had taken to casting from the shore, where the water was clear enough to spot bass schooling near the reeds. Around 8:45 a.m., one of them noticed something strange near the far edge. Something dark and heavy snagged just beneath the ice, tangled in a submerged log. I thought it was a backpack, the younger brother later told authorities, but it didn't float right. They called it in. By noon, the pond was cordoned off with yellow tape. The water team from Lakeside and Route, and Amelia Hayes standing at the shoreline with her coat zipped to her throat. Divers retrieved it carefully. It was a duffel bag, large industrial, the kind used for sports gear or overnight trips. The zipper had rusted halfway open. Inside, they found what no one wanted to believe anymore. A child's body. The call came in just after midnight. The coroner confirmed the remains. Female, approximately 10 years old. Preliminary dental matches were consistent with Lily Peterson. Amelia didn't wait for full DNA confirmation to inform Evelyn. She drove to the Peterson apartment alone, without media, without lights. When Evelyn opened the door, she already knew. Her face crumbled before Amelia could speak. It's her, isn't it? Amelia stayed silent. Evelyn sat down slowly on the carpet, legs folding under her, her hands pressed against her mouth. She didn't cry, she just shook. The photo of Lily on the wall, a school picture, smiling with a glittery pink frame, tilted slightly as if the air itself had shifted. The next afternoon, the county sheriff held a press conference. Cameras clicked as reporters jostled for room in front of the podium. Amelia stood off to the side. She hated these, the theater of it all. Sheriff Thomas Vance stepped up to the mic. We are heartbroken to confirm that the remains recovered yesterday from Whispering Pond have been positively identified as those of Lily Peterson. The rest of the statement blurred into procedural language. Investigative cooperation, continued efforts, and a promise to hold those responsible accountable. Evelyn, standing with her sister at the edge of the crowd, collapsed partway through. Amelia reached her just before she hit the concrete. A medic helped guide her to a bench as cameras swiveled. Evelyn buried her face in her coat and didn't look up again. 2 days later, Amelia sat with Leo again. This time, it was at the child psychologist's office. A neutral space with soft lighting, stuffed animals on the couch, and puzzles stacked neatly on shelves. Leo was quieter now. He'd grown more reserved in the months since Lily disappeared. But when Amelia gently asked about that night again, he blinked hard and said something new. I heard yelling. Amelia leaned forward. Who was yelling? Leo, Dad, and Lily. She said, "You can't tell me what to do." And then he said, "Go back to bed, or I'll make you." Amelia didn't interrupt. Then I heard a thump. I thought it was her dropping her bag. "Did you hear anything else?" Leo hesitated. The door opened. Then it slammed. It was the missing piece. Amelia wrote down every word. With a renewed warrant, Amelia and Officer Parker drove north to Julian Miller's old hunting cabin, tucked off a dirt road near the treine of Pine Hollow. It hadn't been visited in months. The lock on the front door was rusted but intact. Inside, the air was musty, the wood stove cold. A cot in the corner had blackened fabric, burned partially through. They found the remains of bedding in a barrel out back, half charred, plastic melted to ash, in a storage bin beneath the workbench. Amelia found a gallon jug of bleach and a box of cleaning rags. A few strands of long, light brown hair were stuck to a half-burned fleece blanket in the fire barrel. "Bag it all," she told Parker. "We run every item, every strand." When they returned to the car, she looked up at the treine. Clouds hung low, heavy with rain. He'd come out here to clean up what he couldn't erase. Dr. Sarah Miller, the county medical examiner, called Amelia into her lab the following morning. The body was preserved unusually well for being in the water, Sarah said, showing her the scan. Cold temperatures slowed decomposition. "We got lucky." Amelia stood over the monitor, arms folded. To gunshot wounds to the chest. Small caliber, possibly a .22. No exit wounds. She died quickly. No evidence of sexual assault. No defensive wounds. Amelia looked down. She didn't see it coming. She probably never got out of the car. Amelia nodded slowly. It fit. Back at the precinct, Amelia pulled Julian's firearm registration history. In 2016, he'd legally purchased a .22 caliber Ruger pistol. It had never been reported, stolen, or sold. She called his attorney. "We'd like to confirm possession of Mr. Miller's registered firearm," she said. Adam Grant was calm, polite. "Unfortunately, my client no longer has that item. It was stolen from his vehicle sometime last year. He filed no report." "Convenient," Amelia muttered, then hung up. She flagged the weapon and entered it into the state's missing registry. On Friday morning, Amelia walked into the district attorney's office with a folder in her hand. Meredith Cole, recently appointed lead prosecutor, read the summary in silence. "You have DNA from the cabin?" she asked. "Still pending, but the hair is a visual match. And we've got motive, timeline, ballistics match on wound size, and a witness placing his car at the lake, plus his son's testimony." Meredith looked up. "And you believe he acted alone?" Amelia nodded. "No accomplice. He got angry, lost control, and covered it up the best he could." Meredith slid the folder back across the desk. "Then let's move forward. I'll file charges first thing Monday." Amelia exhaled, shoulders sagging. It had taken 4 months, but they finally had enough. The arrest warrant came through at 7:04 a.m. on a Monday. Amelia Hayes was already at her desk when the notification popped up. She stood, grabbed her jacket, and signaled to Officer Parker. "Let's go get him." They pulled up to Julian Miller's apartment 20 minutes later. The complex looked the same as always. Quiet, modest, flakes of spring frost still clinging to the railings. But something felt off. A neighbor's dog barked once, then fell silent. Amelia knocked firmly on the door. No answer. "Julian Miller, open up." Crystal Creek Police. Parker tried the knob. Locked. Amelia nodded, and he stepped back before ramming it open with one sharp shoulder hit. Inside, the apartment was clean. To clean. Blankets folded, table cleared, Leo's toys gone. Amelia scanned the empty space, eyes narrowing. They're gone. Parker moved quickly to the bedrooms. Both were empty. No sign of Leo. The drawers in Lily's overnight bag, the one Evelyn had packed back in December, had been emptied. Amelia's jaw clenched. He took the boy. By noon, an Amber Alert had been issued for Leo Miller. Amelia's team set up in the precinct's conference room, whiteboards filling fast with timelines, maps, and financial records. Every phone call, every card swipe, every traffic camera ping was fair game. "He hasn't used his cell since Friday," said Detective Lucas from Cyber, "but a surveillance pull from an ATM in Riverside caught him Sunday night. Clear image. He took out $320 in cash." Amelia looked at the still frame. Julian, wearing a hooded jacket and a ball cap, glancing sideways as he entered his PIN. Behind him, Leo stood off to the side, hugging a stuffed bear. "Search every gas station and motel between Riverside and the state line," Amelia said, "and check every relative, every known associate. He's on foot or using someone else's car." Officer Parker walked over with a clipboard. "We just got a tip from Greenfield PD. Julian's cousin owns a trailer out east. Matches a known address from a past emergency contact." Amelia grabbed her keys. "Let's move." The trailer sat nestled among scraggly trees just off a gravel path in the woods outside Maple Ridge. Dawn was still breaking when Amelia, Parker, and 2 officers from the county task force surrounded the property. No lights were on inside. Birds chirped weakly overhead. A back door creaked open. Amelia spotted a flash of movement. Julian holding Leo by the arm, trying to cut through the tree line toward the rear woods. "There, oh," she shouted. Officers converged fast. Julian froze, turning to shield Leo. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't run, just held Leo close, his voice low and quick. "Don't take him, please. He needs me." 2 officers cuffed him without resistance. Leo didn't fight, but his grip on Julian's hoodie lingered until an officer gently lifted him away. Amelia walked up slowly, crouching near Leo. "Hey, buddy. You okay?" He didn't speak, just nodded stiffly. Amelia turned to Julian, her voice low. "You crossed the line the second you took him." Julian stared back, lips pressed in a tight line. "Not in front of him," he muttered. "Please, get in the cruiser," Amelia said, stepping back. Back at the station, Julian was booked on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. His fingerprints were taken, closed, and belongings sealed into evidence bags. As the property clerk catalogued his keyring, one key stood out. Brass with a faded blue plastic cover. "No markings. Where's this from?" the clerk asked. Julian said nothing. Amelia took a photo of the key and had it sent to nearby facilities for a match. Less than an hour later, they had one. The key belonged to a 5x10 storage unit, rented under the alias J. Clark at Central Plain Storage, 30 miles south. Amelia raised an eyebrow when she read the name. He used his own middle name and mother's maiden name. She said he wasn't even trying to be clever. The wind howled across the parking lot of Central Plain Storage. The place looked abandoned. Rows of metal roll-up doors, peeling white paint, and broken light fixtures swinging on rusted brackets. Amelia and Officer Parker met the manager, who looked more annoyed than curious. "He's been paying in cash every 3 months," the man said, unlocking the outer gate. "Didn't think twice about it." Amelia stood outside Unit 214, warrant in hand. Parker cut the lock and the door screeched open. Dust filled the space. Boxes lined one side. A folding table leaned against the wall. Most of it looked like junk. Old blankets, tools, a cracked fishing net. Parker opened a tackle box near the back. Got something. Inside, wrapped tightly in a thick blue towel, was a small black pistol. Amelia took one look and knew. A Ruger 22, just like the one Julian registered in 2016. Later that afternoon, the ballistics team confirmed it. Same make, same model, same weapon used to shoot Lily Peterson. Amelia returned to her office at dusk. Her phone buzzed as she reached for her coat. It was the forensic lab. The DNA results just came in, the tech said. The hair strands from the blanket at the cabin. It's Lily, no doubt. Amelia didn't respond right away. She lowered herself into her chair, the silence of the station humming round her. We'll send over the formal report in an hour, the tech added. Thanks, Amelia said. She hung up. The case had been a tangle of missing links, slow progress, and relentless doubt. But now she had what she needed, the weapon, the DNA, and enough to put Julian Miller away for good. The county courthouse was unusually crowded that morning. A heavy silence hung in the air as reporters, townspeople, and court officials filled every bench and folding chair available. The wood-panelled courtroom smelled faintly of polish and nerves. Julian Miller sat at the defense table, his expression unreadable. He wore a navy suit that hung loose on his frame like it had been borrowed last minute. To his right, defense attorney Adam Grant adjusted his tie and sorted through notes. Across from them, Assistant District Attorney Meredith Cole arranged her files with quiet efficiency, her gaze steady. At precisely 9:02 a.m., Judge Ethan Johnson entered the room and took his seat. A respected figure in the region, Ethan was known for his level-headedness and strict interpretation of procedural law. This preliminary hearing, he began, will determine whether sufficient evidence exists to proceed to trial on the charges of first degree murder and aggravated kidnapping. His voice was calm, but the weight of what followed settled over everyone like fog. Evelyn Peterson was the first to testify. She stepped into the witness box in a simple grey blouse and black slacks, her shoulders hunched inward as if bracing against the cold. When she was sworn in, her voice cracked faintly with the words, "So help me, God." Meredith stood to question. "Miss Peterson, can you tell the court about the night Lily last stayed with Mr. Miller?" Evelyn nodded slowly. It was December 16th, a Friday. Lily asked to go with her brother, Leo, to stay the night at Julian's. I dropped them off just after 8:30 p.m. Her voice trembled. She texted me later, around 9:20, said they were watching a movie, that she missed me, but she was fine. Meredith approached gently. Was that the last message you received? Evelyn nodded. Yes. Meredith allowed the silence to linger before continuing. Did Julian Miller contact you the next morning? He didn't. I called him when Lily didn't show up. That's when he said she left early. Said she walked home before sunrise. And did Lily have a history of leaving alone like that? Never. She was 10. She was scared of the dark. Evelyn's voice faltered, and she covered her mouth to stifle the sob that rose. The judge granted a short recess so she could regain composure. After the break, the prosecution introduced Leo's interview recordings. Judge Ethan had ruled the child would not testify in open court due to trauma concerns, but prior statements could be entered into evidence. The footage played on a mounted screen. Leo, sitting cross-legged in a brightly lit interview room, recounted hearing his father raise his voice at Lily. She said she wanted to go home. Dad said no. They argued. Then what happened? The interviewer had asked. I heard a loud sound like something falling. The boy hesitated before continuing. When I woke up again, she was gone. Amelia watched from the gallery, her hands clasped tight in her lap. The courtroom remained silent throughout the clip, the gravity of a child's memory laid bare in its quiet delivery. Detective Hayes was next to take the stand. She moved with practiced calm, unfolding each layer of the case for the court. Detective, can you walk us through the initial inconsistencies in Mr. Miller's timeline? Meredith asked. Yes, Amelia said. He claimed Lily left around 5:30 a.m. to walk home. Surveillance footage from nearby buildings shows no sign of her leaving. There are no footprints. Weather conditions at the time make it highly unlikely she could have left without a trace. And were cadaverab dogs brought in? They were. Both dogs showed interest at the southern inlet of North Lake, an area where Julian's car was later placed by an eyewitness and soil analysis. Amelia went on to describe the tire tracks near the boat launch, the bleach scent in Julian's vehicle, and the missing firearm registered in his name, discovered in a storage unit under an alias. We also recovered burned bedding and hair strands at a secondary location, a cabin owned by Mr. Miller, she added. DNA results confirmed the hair belonged to Lily Peterson. When it was his turn to speak, Adam Grant rose slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. Detective Hayes, he began smoothly. You've mentioned soil samples and cadaver dogs. Are these forms of evidence scientifically infallible? They are not infallible, Amelia replied, but they are admissible and considered credible when supported by other evidence. And the DNA on the blanket, did it indicate the time of death? No DNA cannot provide a time of death. And Mr. Miller's firearm found in a shared facility rented under another name. Are you aware of any other fingerprints on the weapon? Amelia hesitated. The handle was wiped. No prints recovered, which means, to be clear, there is no direct evidence proving my client fired that weapon. Amelia didn't answer. She didn't need to. The implication was already clear, and Grant was laying groundwork for doubt. Meredith called Dr. Sarah Miller, the medical examiner, to present the autopsy results. The victim sustained 2 gunshot wounds to the chest, Sarah explained, using a diagram. The bullets matched the caliber of Mr. Miller's registered Ruger pistol. The wounds were consistent with mid-range discharge. Death was likely instantaneous. Meredith followed up with a question. Was there any indication of a struggle? No, Sarah said. There were no defensive wounds, no bruising on the arms or hands. She likely never saw it coming. The courtroom grew heavier with each word. The last witness came as a surprise to many in the room. A former inmate named Tom Jenkins, recently released and now under witness protection. He stepped into the witness box in a collared shirt, escorted by 2 marshals. Mr. Jenkins, did you share a cell with Julian Miller in January? Yeah, for 3 weeks. Did Mr. Miller say anything unusual during that time? Jenkins nodded. He talked a lot. Said he was good at covering things up. One night he said, if you want to make someone vanish, all you need is time and a little bleach. Grant objected immediately. Your Honor, this is hearsay from a known felon. Sustained, Ethan said. Jury will disregard implication unless corroborated. But the words lingered anyway. The damage was done. After a brief recess, Judge Ethan returned with his decision. This court finds that the state has presented sufficient evidence through forensic analysis, testimonial accounts, and circumstantial corroboration to warrant a full criminal trial. Julian didn't flinch. Bail is denied due to the nature of the charges and the defendant's prior attempt to flee with a minor. Trial will be set for the first available date on the criminal docket. As murmurs broke out across the courtroom, Amelia glanced toward Evelyn. She sat still in the front row, clutching a folded photo of Lily. Outside the courthouse, news crews waited for statements. Meredith declined to speak. Amelia walked past the crowd, silent. The case had cleared its first hurdle, but the fight for justice was just beginning. By the time the jury retired to deliberate, The air in the courthouse had turned taut and breathless. The final witnesses had testified, closing arguments were made, and Judge Ethan had instructed the 12 jurors with measured calm. They filed out one by one, their faces unreadable, retreating behind closed doors just past noon. Amelia Hayes watched them go from her seat in the gallery. She'd sat through every minute of the trial, sometimes taking notes, sometimes staring down the back of Julian Miller's head, as if she could will the truth to weigh heavier in the room. By evening, there was no verdict, nor the next morning. The jury requested transcripts. They asked to review the footage of Leo's recorded interview and later the testimony from Amelia herself. When word of the extended deliberation reached the public, media coverage exploded. Local anchors ran round-clock commentary. National outlets picked up the story. Commentators dissected the possibility of a hung jury. On the courthouse lawn, vigil groups stood beside protest signs. Some brought candles, others brought cameras. Inside, the silence was sharper than the noise outside. It was late afternoon on the second day when the call finally came. The jury had reached a decision. The courtroom filled fast. Reporters returned. Clerks checked badges. Deputies lined the walls. Amelia sat near the aisle. Evelyn sat 2 rows ahead, her sister's hand wrapped firmly around her own. Julian was led in through the side door, flanked by 2 officers. He wore the same navy suit from the pre-trial hearing. His face was calm. Too calm, Amelia thought, as if the outcome didn't concern him either way. The judge entered. All rise. The forewoman, a woman in her late 50s with a stern brow and a trembling paper in her hand, stood slowly as Judge Ethan prompted her. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. In the matter of the state of Minnesota versus Julian Miller, on the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. Amelia's shoulders tensed. And on the charge of aggravated kidnapping, guilty. A wave of stillness passed through the courtroom. No gasp, no murmur, just a stunned kind of silence, like even the air dared not move. Julian did not blink. His jaw stayed slack, his hands flat on the table. Grant leaned toward him slightly, whispered something inaudible. Julian didn't respond. Judge Ethan nodded. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You are dismissed with the gratitude of the court. The 12 filed out again, this time slower, heavier, with the burden they no longer carried written on their faces. Sentencing was held immediately following the verdict, a procedural decision already agreed upon given the gravity of the charges and the overwhelming public interest. Meredith Cole stood at the prosecution table. Her voice was steady, her eyes sharper than ever. The state requests consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, Your Honor. The nature of the crime, the age of the victim, and the defendant's actions afterward, including flight and concealment, warrant the maximum sentence allowed by law. Grant stood, but offered no real objection. We'll note our intent to appeal, but will not contest sentencing at this time. Judge Ethan's voice didn't waver. Mr. Miller, you have been found guilty of the most grievous offenses under our law. This court sentences you to life terms to be served consecutively, without the possibility of parole. Julian didn't move. He looked neither relieved nor afraid. If he felt anything at all, it remained locked behind the same impassive mask he'd worn for months. The gavel came down. Evelyn stood slowly when asked if she wished to speak. She didn't carry any notes. Her voice trembled at first, but she didn't falter. My daughter was 10 years old, she began, facing the judge, but her gaze slid to Julian. She loved to draw horses. She was afraid of thunderstorms. She always took care of her little brother before herself. She paused and she trusted you. Amelia could feel the courtroom shift, the invisible press of breath being held. She trusted you to keep her safe, and you destroyed her. Her eyes welled, but she didn't wipe them. My daughter was light, she said, and you buried her in darkness. Evelyn stepped down. The judge offered a nod. No words followed. 2 officers approached Julian. They guided him to his feet, cuffed his wrists behind his back, and led him from the room without ceremony. The chain at his ankles rattled faintly with each step. Amelia rose as he passed her row. For the first time, Julian glanced at her. Not long, just a flicker, but enough. She met his gaze unflinching. There was nothing left in his expression. No rage, no plea, just absence, like the person inside had long since fled. That night, the town was quiet. Amelia returned to her office briefly, just long enough to set the case file down on her desk. Its spine was thick now. Photographs, transcripts, forensic reports, all packed tight inside. She didn't lock it away. Instead, she left the file open and sat beside it, her fingers resting on the first page. A missing person report from December 17th. Evelyn would never get her daughter back. No sentence could fill that void, but justice, real justice, had found its way through. Amelia exhaled slowly, and for the first time in months, the air didn't feel quite so heavy. Whispering Pond was still that morning, still in a way it hadn't been since winter broke. The surface was glass reflecting thin clouds drifting overhead. The brush had grown in thick round the shore, and wild violets peeked through patches of green near the water's edge. At the southern inlet, just beyond the boat launch, where Lily Peterson's duffel had once surfaced, a semicircle of folding chairs and blankets filled the clearing. People came quietly, neighbors, classmates, teachers, law enforcement, even parents who had never met Evelyn or Lily. The town of Crystal Creek had gathered for a single reason, to say goodbye. The tree sat off to the side in a burlap-wrapped root bowl. It was a sugar maple chosen specifically by Lily's homeroom teacher because of its changing leaves. She would have liked that, Evelyn had said when they asked. Evelyn stood at the front beside a small stone plaque that bore Lily's name and the words "Forever Our Light." She wore no black, only a pale blue sweater that Lily had once called her sky shirt. Her fingers were wrapped tightly around Leo's hand. The wind carried bird song over the water. Pastor Sullivan offered a short prayer, then stepped aside. Evelyn didn't speak. She didn't need to. When it was time to plant the tree, volunteers from the local garden club lifted the maple gently into the shallow earth. Soil passed from hand to hand, teachers, friends, neighbors, all pressing it around the roots. Amelia handed Evelyn a small spade, and she bent down quietly, smoothing the top layer. Then Leo stepped forward. He had been silent through most of the morning, clinging to his mother's coat, eyes fixed somewhere far off, but now he reached into his jacket and pulled out a carefully folded sheet of paper. He knelt by the tree, set it gently against the plaque, and weighted it with a flat stone. It was a drawing, childlike, but unmistakable. Lily stood in a yellow dress, smiling. She held a red balloon. Above her, a sun with a face beamed down, and beside her was a stick figure, Leo holding her hand. No one said a word. Evelyn pressed a kiss to the top of his head and held him close. Long after the chairs had been packed up and the volunteers had gone home, the clearing by Whispering Pond stood empty again, except for one figure. Amelia Hayes returned just after dusk, walking the shoreline path with a single rose in hand. She wore no badge, no duty belt, just a worn field jacket and jeans, her hair pulled back tight. She stood in front of the tree for a while. The drawing was still there, fluttering slightly under the stone. The plaque had already gathered its first film of pollen. Amelia crouched near the water's edge. She placed the rose on the surface, watching it drift slowly outward, caught in a lazy current. She didn't speak. She just stood there as the sun dipped below the ridge, her reflection flickering in the ripples. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Evelyn opened Lily's door. The room had remained untouched since December. Sunlight filtered in through sheer curtains, casting soft shadows on the posters that still clung to the walls. A line of books, The Babysitter's Club, The Wildwood Chronicles, sat neatly on the shelf above her desk. Her backpack hung on the chair. Evelyn moved slowly, hands brushing the spine of each book as she passed. She sat at the foot of the bed and reached for the folded blanket, a patchwork of purples and pinks that Lily had loved. She smoothed it across the mattress. The room smelled faintly of lavender, the last scent Lily had begged for during bath time. Evelyn stood, her hand lingering on the corner of the blanket. She walked to the door, paused, and looked back once more. The photo of Lily on the dresser showed her mid-laugh, head tilted, eyes squinting at something just outside the frame. Evelyn reached for the light switch. She flicked it off. "Good night, sweetheart," she whispered, and gently closed the door behind her. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more on our channel.